Hi, I'm Dalvet Quince. One way to help manage type 2 diabetes is to regularly exercise. My exercise program can help get you into a routine that works for you. Keep in mind, managing blood sugar also takes the right
diet. Hi, I'm celebrity chef Franklin Becker. Ever since I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I've adapted my cooking style without sacrificing flavor. If you want to learn more tips about diet
and exercise,
visit mytype2transformation.com.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello Ranks Squad and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite transatlantic football podcast. My name's Jack Collins and I'll be your host today. And joining me all the way across the water in San Diego, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, all good over here, mate. I say all good. It's not really all good. It's probably the first time since being in America that I've actually wished I was in England, mate. I missed it. I missed the big moment. If we're going to do things we love this week, then the only thing I love right now is Harry Wilson for saving our bacon in a game we absolutely dominated, absolutely battered Brentford. But it didn't look like we were going to get anything from it. And Harry Wilson saves the day. I was jumping around. Reece was off school, actually, was off ill. So he was in the room with me. And funny enough, just before they scored, Fulham scored, he said, "I'm going to make something for you, Dad." And he went into the other room and he drew a soccer rainbow, he called it. But it was just a rainbow. And he gave it to me. He goes, "Here's your soccer rainbow." He handed it to me and we equalised. It's now my lucky soccer rainbow. And then I literally had him like over my head as we scored the winner. But it probably wasn't quite as good as it was in the Hammersmith end, mate. So how are you and how was your Monday night?
Well, you can hear that my voice is a little bit ropey still. It was an incredible experience for approximately 5 minutes. The 90 minutes preceding that were amongst the most frustrating, I think, of my football watching life. As you say, complete dominance on pitch. For it to be, just banging our head against a brick wall, I think, from a Fulham perspective. And look, you credit where it's due. Brentford defended really well, and they did look like they were going to see it out. But I was saying afterwards that it was going to be one of those frustrating things of all time because I think Brentford carried the ball to the Fulham half.
They did nothing, literally nothing.
So, one of the least, dynamic performances I think I've ever seen from an away side. And it felt like they were going to get away with it. And so from a footballing perspective, as much as a Fulham won, it felt like justice was served. My legs are a bit all over the place. I fell down about 10 rows in the Hammersmith end when the goals. I actually stood in your old seat yesterday.
Don't.
Because my dad came to the game with me and my brother. My brother and my dad share 2 season tickets, and he wanted to go. So I was like, okay, I'll buy a couple of extra tickets for a couple of friends, and we'll stand over in the bit we used to stand about 10 seats away from each other, Dean and I. Yeah. And I picked up the seats that Dean used to sit in and stood in them.
Oh, did that feel emotional? Did it feel weird?
It was emotional.
Well, because my mate wasn't there. Biro wasn't there last night because he wasn't well. Because he's normally there in the seat behind, but even he wasn't there last night. He just got back off holiday and he wasn't well on the way back. So he didn't even make it to the game. So you didn't even have him to stand with. But the lads around there are pretty good fun, actually. And they usually go pretty wild when there's a last minute goal.
Yeah, it was very good. I had a great time. I've never seen a turnaround like that before, in where both goals were scored in stoppage time. Like, you go into the 90-minute mark, the clock ticks red and you're losing and you end up winning the game. And I know it's happened a couple of times recently. Chelsea against Manchester United, Cole Palmer scoring a double. Spurs did it against Leicester, if I'm not mistaken, to turn things around. Obviously, you go back to Aguero as well, and that moment for City that all happened once the clock was red. But this was the first time I've ever experienced it in the flesh, and it was truly quite something. So, yeah, an amazing evening at Craven Cottage in the end. That 5 minutes amongst the best feeling I've ever had at a football match. It was truly amazing.
What was it like after? Because obviously, like, Fulham and Brentford don't like each other. I know, like, on a global scale, this rivalry is very minimal and has no impact in the outside world. But, like, in that part of London, like, we really don't like each other. And there's no team I hate losing to more than them and QPR. Like, they're the two teams I cannot stand losing to. Chelsea I've just come to expect. But because they thought they'd done it. Of course they did. They thought.
Yeah, and reasonably so, right? You clock in, when the clock goes red, you're like, we're probably getting minimum a point.
Were they giving it the big one? Were they giving it the big one?
I mean, I think that the way that it was just wave after wave after wave of Fulham pressure probably quietened it a tad. But yeah, I mean, you'd expect them to be given the big one, and you're getting these kind of moments, and then that pure. This is it. It was relief as much as anything else. Adrenaline. I think it was incredible. I came out of there. I was like, I've got a headache.
There's no better feeling,
to walk
mate.
home quietly because, well, walk back to the pub quietly. So it was amazing.
It was honestly, so obviously, like, here the game's midday on a Monday. Totally bizarre to be watching Fulham versus Brentford. I can see
under the lights while it's
watching
bright
it
outside.
Dark. Everyone's got their coats on, and I got the lights of Craven Cottage beaming down. I've got the TV on in here, and you can just see blue skies out the window and people walking by who have absolutely no idea what's going on in West London at this moment in time. So I'm literally in my own world with Reece occasionally popping into it. But yeah, like, all I could think about was like what it would have been like celebrating in the exact spot where you were in that moment. And then also like knowing how desperate I would have been to just go and have a pint afterwards on the way home. Like that pint after a win like that is just it feels like such a well-earned pint, and it just becomes part of the experience of going through a moment like that. It's even worth missing a train or two to enjoy that pint. So I was very jealous of you last night.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I spoke to a fair few Brentford fans after the game, in the pub and whatever, and they were all just like, well, yeah, you probably deserved it because there was only one team trying to score from like the 25th minute onwards. So
even their goal was like a random shot, isn't it, really?
It's an absolutely
great goal,
strike,
but it's like it's not like a carved out chance.
Yeah. It was a funny experience, but one that obviously came out on the right side of, and had a really joyous
Harry Wilson
one
forever,
well.
mate. I've had such mixed feelings about this guy throughout his time at Fulham. This is the most we've probably ever talked about Fulham on the main pod, to be fair. But there have been times when I've wanted him to just give up, just go. Like, he just has never quite lived up to like who he could have been at that moment. Think of where he was at Liverpool and how he was talked about, and then ended up joining us. And he's had some unbelievable moments, Harry Wilson. But this one just writes his name in Fulham folklore. Like, he's there. He can stay as long as he wants now.
Yeah, he's done. Well done, Harry. A Welsh wizard giving us some Derby Day delight. Right, I want to talk about something else for Thing I Love. I thought you'd start with that one, so I've come prepped as well. And a shout out to former producer of this podcast, Mr. Sean Fay, who was our boss at Bleacher Report.
He was the mastermind of this podcast. We wouldn't have had it without him.
Mastermind. BR Football Ranks was Sean Fay's brainchild. And Sean is actually a Fulham fan as well. But more than that, Sean supports Shelbourne in Dublin. And Shelbourne just won their first title in nearly 20 odd years. Because they were led to the title, they needed to win away at Derry City, who are a very good side, and I think we're third in the league before the final day in the League of Ireland, to win this title under the stewardship of Damien Duff. And there's been some brilliant interviews with Damien Duff over the last couple of weeks, and him basically saying, this would be the greatest achievement of my footballing life. Now, Damien Duff has won a lot of things, right? He's won Premier League medals. He's won Carabao Cups. He got over 100 caps for the Republic of Ireland. He captained them at Euros. And he is saying that this is the most impressive achievement he's ever done. And you know what? fair play to him. When Damien Duff took over at Shelbourne, they were newly promoted back to the top division. Within 3 years, he has them crowned as champions. And what I've loved about watching Duffer in this role is how much he clearly cares, right? And he's been a massive advocate for the League of Ireland, which still remains a really niche league. You're still more likely to see a lot of people flying over from Dublin or from Cork to Liverpool and Manchester in particular, but to London as well, every weekend, as much as you are to see them going down to their local League of Ireland club. It has been a league that's sort of been neglected by the FAI, the Irish FA, for so many years. And Damien Duff coming in as a figurehead. I think, sometimes when that comes in, you get a big name coming into a league and all the other managers are like, well, this is just glamour. It's whatever it is. That is not the case with Duff at all. People and his opposite numbers love the work he's put in, love the graft he's put in, love the commitment that he's given to Shells over the last few years and what he's achieved with them, turning it around and actually making Shells the top club in the country and therefore off on a European tour next year is going to be incredible. So I just wanted to give a massive shout out to Duffer, to Shelbourne, to Sean, who's a long-suffering Shelbourne fan. But they pip Shamrock Rovers, who are, one of the biggest clubs in Ireland, who have been one of the most successful clubs over the last few years as well. And also who Damien Duff coached in their youth systems before flipping the script. So to beat Rovers as well as that, I mean, Rovers are in the Conference League this year, right? They've got a game against Chelsea coming up in the next few weeks. So for Shells to go and do that and the way that they did it and the drama of the last minute winner on Friday night, just incredible. Lots and lots of love for Duffer and really, really giving the League of Ireland some much needed publicity and bringing a lot of happiness to a lot of Shells fans. So shouts out to Duffer. That's my thing I love this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely the most also we've ever spoken about Irish football on this pod and ever. But Sean deserves that moment. And so does Damien Duff. Future Fulham manager, what do you reckon?
Perhaps. I mean, he's showing all of the right language. But to be honest, I think a future Ireland manager probably on this.
Yeah, you could do with that more than Fulham need one.
Yeah, let's leave him with Chelsea for a little while. Yeah, they got some European football to enjoy next season. So that'll be really interesting. We'll keep an eye on how Duffer is getting on. And with that, we'll bring to an end part one of this podcast. Can't wait to get into the main segment next because it is a Dean Jones ranking, ladies and gentlemen, and one not about transfers. I can't wait. Stick with us. Welcome back to Ranks FC, where it's time for our main ranking this week. And I can't wait to hand the floor over to Mr. Dean Jones.
Yeah, definitely something different this week. While you were having your beer after the Fulham game yesterday, I was thinking, what are we going to rank? It's so hard in the Champions League week. Into another international breaks coming up. Not a lot has changed really in domestic football recently that we can properly get stuck into deep analysis on it. So I was thought, right, let's just do something very open-ended and something we can actually have a fun debate over and that people can be shouting it at us about while they're walking or driving or sat on the bus or whatever they're doing right now. So I thought, what's something fun we could do? And I text you and I said, why don't we do something random, like ranking superstar footballers on current form? And you were like, yeah, that sounds fun. I was like, I'm so glad he said that because that now makes life so much easier and I can actually get set here because I text you like 3 p.m. here or whatever. Right, later on I can set about how we're going to actually come up with this list. So the first thing I had to kind of define is like, who are we calling superstars these days? Right. Yeah. So the list I initially sent you, I was like Haaland, Salah, Mbappé, Vinicius Jr., Messi, and Ronaldo. In my eyes, like they're the six that
top pack.
They're still the elite superstars, right? Like if you've just going to get a random shirt with a random name on the back, they're probably the ones you're going for. And then I was like, well, Harry Kane has to be considered in this conversation. Lewandowski probably has to be talked about in this conversation. And the only one I'm kind of I was like, there's got to be more than one in the Premier League, more than two in the Premier League. There's got to be someone else. And I was like, who would it be? Saka? Is he a superstar?
Yeah, maybe.
And I was like, oh, does he count? Does Lamine Yamal count?
Rodri's just won the Ballon d'Or.
Rodri's just won the Ballon d'Or. Does he count? I ruled Rodri out because I don't think he's a superstar. He's not a superstar. He's the best footballer in the world, but he's not a superstar. I don't think it counts.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. I think this is actually kind of the discussion is almost like what are the most shirt sales?
Exactly.
Still,
it's a bit of that. And then so I was like, okay, so look, how do we define this list? Like if we're going to come up with it, especially if we're talking about right now, how would we rank these players? What are kind of the metrics that we use to establish where we're at? And basically, it came down to the obvious one is performance, right? How are they performing right now? And the easiest way to measure it for a superstar is goals and assists. So again, Rodri, really hard to define as a superstar because his metrics are really hard to weigh up compared to like all the other people that are going to be on this list.
Really?
So goals and assists are there. And if you were to do this in deeper detail, you could go into like expected chances created, key passes, dribbles, and all those sorts of things, right? So if you were to go really deep, then I think that's where you would be heading for a superstar ranking. But basically, like performance metrics, that's where you're at. It's like, what else matters when we're defining these superstars? Influence on your team's results. What impact do these guys have on match outcomes? And also, how do they influence the key moments within those matches? Like, what are their contributions in those matches? So I think that those two metrics, I think, are probably the most important. But the third one, I think, becomes very key with the sort of players that we are ranking here: fitness and consistency. Obviously, a couple of the names that I've read out are aging superstars. You can't really compare like for like Ronaldo and Saka, for example, or Ronaldo and Haaland. Like they're completely different ends of their career. You can't expect Ronaldo to be doing what these guys are doing, but you also have to give him the respect for being in the conversation. So, how many minutes do they still play? What is their injury record like? And how much do they deserve to be moved up this list? And then I think that the fourth one for me, I was like, what else really matters? And I think it's influence on teammates, also kind of relevance and adoration.
Standing of league.
Yeah. So like leadership, adoration, what league they're playing in right now, those sorts of things, right? Because again, like the Saudi League and the Premier League, like you can't do like for like. Yeah. But those are the four places that I've tried to use to kind of measure these players up against each other to see where we come out with this list. So it is based on recent performances, but it's also a little bit hypothetical because we're not using like pure data here to measure all these players against each other. So I drew up the 9 names that I've got there. Couldn't get to 10. Do you think I've missed anyone out that should be on it? Is there one that jumps out at you? If Saka's in it, should Lamine Yamal be in it?
Yeah, if they're in it, they should both be in it. I think you're absolutely right. So it's harder with that in it. And this is the thing, you're kind of looking for that star. And look, Saka and Lamine Yamal are clearly stars, but are they in the bracket here that we're putting some of these other names in? Are they in, top 10 contention at the Ballon d'Or or have been on a recent basis? Bellingham is the only one that maybe I thought about, but
I thought Bellingham
I don't think he's there yet. I think there still needs more consistency in his performances. Actually, he hasn't been great this season, let's be frank. I still don't think he's probably on a level with Mbappé and with Vinicius Jr. at Real Madrid, even if, not on performance levels in terms of them two feel like the big name stars of this team right now. Bellingham feels, a little bit behind them. And I think also, we are mostly talking about forwards here, right? Like midfielders kind of drop into it a little bit. Defenders don't sell as many shirts as forwards do. So I think when you're talking about this, maybe you make the thing elite forwards, because that takes out the conversation of should Rodri be in it, because he should. Clearly, he's just won the Ballon d'Or.
But he's not a superstar. There's nobody in the world calls Rodri a superstar. No one.
Yeah, no,
never seen him described as that. whereas everybody else here is. And it's because they're attackers. There's no doubt about it. Like, that is what they are. But then I was like, well, was Luka Modric a superstar? Probably.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, so there are superstars. David Beckham was a superstar. So you can be a superstar from a different position, but
the game was slightly different.
The game was different. You
when Beckham
had
was
to also
there.
have something about. Like, Beckham obviously
Zidane
was
a superstar.
Beckham was he was like a model and stuff at the same time. So he was changing the way that footballers were viewed at the time. So, you know, I know that Bellingham's trying to do that as well. I don't think Bellingham is quite ready to be in this ranking, if I'm totally honest. And Rodri, I'm sorry, he's just not making the list.
Okay, all right, let's go with it then.
So, Jack, as a jump-off point, I've got an initial ranking for us to work off, thanks to our friends at ChatGPT. Because I thought, you know what, like, I don't use ChatGPT, but a lot of people are incorporating it in their work now. So I thought, you know what, I wonder if I just type these metrics in on ChatGPT and say, can you make me a ranking comparing these players, what they'll come up with. So look, Lamine Yamal's not actually in this list because I didn't put him down in when I was doing it. But the list that ChatGPT came out with listed it like this. Number 9, Ronaldo. 8, Lewandowski. 7, Messi. 6, Vinicius Jr. 5, Saka. 4, Salah. 3, Kane. 2, Mbappe. 1, Haaland. So that's our starting point. What jumps out at you straight away as being wrong? Because we and you are going to come up with this ranking live, mate. I have got an idea of where I'm going with all of this, but I'd like me and you to do this live.
I think Kylian Mbappe is the most sellable footballer in the world. But I think in terms of performance, currently, where we're at with those players, I would have Vinicius Jr. top of this list. And so, considering how low he is, I'm a bit shocked. I would have had Harry Kane lower on superstar influence and things like that. I really don't think that he quite carries himself in some of the ways that these other do. I think that all 3 of the bottom 3 are low. This is really hard.
It's really hard.
Like, I mean, there's lots of different elements going on. So should we start from the bottom and try and work our way up in terms of where we think players, and if you start it, I'll see where we get to.
Okay, so seeing as we have now added Lamine Yamal to the list, we have to straight away decide, because I don't think it's wrong actually to put Ronaldo at 9, okay? I don't think it's wrong that Ronaldo is bottom of this list of superstars. Do you? I need to know that first.
It depends what the line is on this, because one of the things you talked about at the start was his impact on the rest of his team. Now, it's worth noting that Al Nassr are not the best team in Saudi Arabia. Al Hilal are. And what they're doing and what they've put together has been pretty impressive. And actually, it's relatively shorn of silverware for Cristiano Ronaldo since he's actually moved to Saudi Arabia. It's something that isn't hugely talked about. Now, his goal record is still exceptional over there. But equally, it's not miles off what Alexander Mitrovic's goal record is. And I don't think anybody's putting him in a superstar list. Now, I would maybe argue, and I don't know what the numbers are on this, but I would still be surprised if Cristiano Ronaldo shirts aren't the most sold shirts in the world. I'd be surprised. But I don't think he needs to be at the very top of this list at this point in his career. I still think that it depends. This is hard because I suppose what we're discussing is where are we power ranking, like a mini ranking within a ranking, the elements of this. Is it how well you're contributing to a team that is doing well? Because of these players, I would say the lowest in terms of being an actual superstar is either Kane or Lewandowski. In terms of their personalities, in terms of where they're at in their careers, they're both still later stage, but they're both still having an immediate impact on 2 teams that are currently top of their divisions in European top 5 leagues, and they are both currently top of their scoring charts as well. So in terms of on-pitch stuff, Kane and Lewandowski wouldn't be at the bottom of this. But in terms of off-pitch stuff, they might still be.
Okay, so remember, we are doing it on current form as well. Cristiano Ronaldo is playing in the Saudi Pro League, which is the worst league out of any of the ones listed here. Like, I do believe that MLS is higher, and when people rank the leagues, MLS does come higher than the Saudi Pro League.
It is. We're within the actual official rankings of where leagues exist. Like, that's a fact. So we can deal with that as fact.
This season, Cristiano Ronaldo in that league has scored 9 goals from 13 games. He's got 3 assists too. But I reached out to a friend of mine, Mustafa, who is the producer of Chasing Green Arrows, the fantasy show that I do. And because he watches the Saudi Pro League every week, right? He watches all the games. I said, mate, I just need to get your insight on what Ronaldo is actually like now. What is Ronaldo? What is a Cristiano Ronaldo at a domestic league right now? He said, this season, he's been okay, more of a poacher. He sometimes get into the position to score, but he's definitely not as effective as he was last season. Last week, he even missed a penalty, which knocked his team out of the cup. I'm sure you've all seen that, the one he sticks over the crossbar, right? So he's even missing those now. 1 goal in the Asian Champions League. It says he's just definitely not as effective. So I think when you already know that Ronaldo is obviously on the wane, when we know that he turns 40 in February, like, that's perfectly acceptable.
This is also fair enough,
I don't think that there's any doubt, to be honest, that of the 10 players listed on here, Ronaldo is number 10. The other thing that I am using in my brain, by the way, to gauge where we are on these, if you could stick one of these players into your own team at the weekend, who would you pick? And I just wouldn't pick Ronaldo. Like, I just wouldn't pick Ronaldo out of this list. So he would be the 10th pick. So Ronaldo is at 10, right?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'll accept that argument.
So then we get back to Lamine Yamal. Like, we have to start deciding where he ranks, because according to the ChatGPT ranking that we had there, the 2 above him now in this list would be Lewandowski and Messi. But also, I guess as a more direct comparison for Yamal, I personally would have probably Saka, who they ranked at 5th. So what do we think we're going to get here in 9th position, and how far are we thinking up this list we're going to be pushing Lamine, or should he probably be in this spot?
No, I don't think he should be here. Like, I think Lamine Yamal is on the verge of becoming a top 3 player in this list. Now, I don't think he's there yet, but I think that he's on the verge of it, and we're about to see, and I think we're seeing in real time, really, the breakout of one of football's next great superstars, right? Rodri addressing him in his Ballon d'Or speech, being like, this will be you soon. This will be you. There is no doubt. I read a brilliant interview on The Athletic with Alvaro Morata as well. And the way that other people are talking about Lamine Yamal, experienced footballers who are up there with the elite, talking about this guy like there is nothing in the world that can stop him. Now, this has happened before. We've had borders really break through, but I don't think to this extent. Now, the fact that he's relatively new on the scene, in inverted commas, compared to the rest of these at the very least, probably counts against him a little bit. But I'll be honest, this is where I would have Lionel Messi. Because I think that ultimately, and whilst what Messi's done this season has been absolutely incredible, don't get me wrong, and the numbers he's putting up in MLS, the fact that Miami remain favourites for the time being, anyway, to go and win MLS Cup, the fact that they've won the Supporters' Shield already, has so much to do with what he's put together. And I think what he's shown on the international stage recently has clearly been more than what we've seen from Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. But I still think that if we're going to touch on the idea that some of these leagues are so much lower down the pecking order than others, everybody else is playing at a level which is far higher. And I say that with all due respect, and I love MLS, you know that. But the rest of these levels are pretty high. And we're talking about real top teams in top leagues. And that's where this falls down at this point. And look, it's the same conversation, right? We don't necessarily think that you're having that moment where, Lionel Messi at this point is going to be shifting back to any sort of top league anytime soon. I think that time has come and gone, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think that whilst he is still having a clear impact, there is less to be said about that impact than there is for some of the others right now.
Okay, it's interesting. I am not convinced about that. I still think that in terms of superstar status, he's got it more than Lewandowski has. If you compare their numbers in this current season, and we are doing this on form, Messi, obviously his season runs differently, so it's hard to compare exactly, but 24 games for Inter Miami, 22 goals, 13 assists. Lewandowski so far has, in La Liga, obviously, 15 games, 17 goals, 2 assists. But remember also, we're talking superstar status here and on current form. So in terms of superstars, there's those other elements: influence on team results, fitness and consistency. Okay, like Messi does fall down on that one. But then there's that other intangible, I guess, like what league they're in, but also what influence they have, what leadership they have, what the recognition is, what the relevance is of that person. And I'm going to go back and say it again. Who would you want in your team this weekend? I'd rather have Messi in my team than Lewandowski this weekend.
I don't know, man.
I think it's tight. Don't get me wrong. I think it's tight.
I think if you're going to drop Lewandowski below Messi on superstar status, then you probably have to drop him below Cristiano Ronaldo as well. Because whilst we probably don't see the impact that he's having in Saudi Arabia, because it's somewhere that, you and I, you're one, in America, and two, this podcast has a very heavy American listenership. I work for Sirius. We both work for American companies. Thus, there is that kind of level of obvious, this is in your face a little bit more. But I would probably imagine that Cristiano Ronaldo's influence within Saudi Arabia and within Arabian football generally is still incredibly high, right? So I feel like if you're going to drop Lewandowski below Messi on superstar status, you're still going to have to drop him below Cristiano Ronaldo because the conversation is almost the same, right?
Okay, so are we doing that? Are we putting Lewandowski at 10, Ronaldo at 9?
No, I think we're putting him above both of them. I'm gonna be very European football biased here. It is my specialist subject of Mastermind. So I'm going to say that what Lewandowski is doing and being, the leader in many ways, the kind of experienced head in this Barcelona team with so many young players around him is more impressive, I think. And actually that revival in this season, what he's put together under Hansi Flick pushes him up for me.
Okay, fair enough. So you've got Messi at 9, Lewandowski at 8, or do you have him higher?
I might have him higher, to be honest.
Whoa.
Might have him higher.
Whoa. I personally definitely would have Lewandowski at 9.
Who have you got 8?
At 8, I think it is Messi, yeah. I think it's Messi.
Okay.
Yeah. I was tempted to put Messi higher, if I'm honest, just because he still absolutely amazes me what he's capable of, and I still think that he might be better than all of these players on the list.
Yeah.
There's definitely an argument he could still probably be number 1. But I think if you're looking
there is an argument, but I don't think we can make that argument convincingly when we don't see him.
He does literally walk around the football pitch and he's just too good for everyone from set pieces, and can do a quick body swerve that can still throw any player in the world. So there's still that, but we're also judging him on the Messi of the past, which perhaps isn't fair, but I don't really think currently we can put him any higher in the list.
Okay, I've made a decision. I'm going to go Cristiano Ronaldo at 10, Lionel Messi at 9, Harry Kane at 8, Robert Lewandowski at 7.
Okay.
Because I still think that Lewandowski's star power and the fact that he is doing it at Barcelona, who, I still think have more global appeal, superstar appeal than Bayern Munich. Whether you think that's right or not is a different question. But I think that people tend to, generally, globally, worldwide, care more about Barcelona than they do about Bayern. And whilst what Kane is doing is very impressive, I think that Barcelona are currently better than Bayern, which is easy to say when they won 4-1 against them last week. But I do think that Kane probably has less global appeal than a Lewandowski at this point still.
Less global appeal, mate. But if there's any player that you would be choosing as your leading striker, surely Kane is in the conversation. 14 games for Bayern Munich so far this season, 17 goals, 8 assists. Remember, we're judging a player here on how he's doing in the Bundesliga and the Champions League. Obviously, there are more Champions League games this week, so bear that in mind when we're going through these stats. But I mean, Kane, that seems pretty harsh to have Kane down there. I understand the debate though, because I struggle to consider Kane as a superstar, but I don't know why. Like, he outscores pretty much everyone in world football. He's done it at the highest level. He's taken not a gamble on his career, but he's doing something that we've never thought he would actually do, which is step outside of his comfort zone to go and do it in a different country. And at the international scene, he saves his country time and time again. He's like the leading goal. Like, he's got all these leading goal scorer assets, and you're saying he's still below Lewandowski. I think that's quite a big shout. Do you remember so ChatGPT ranked Harry Kane at number 3 in this metric. The main reason was not just the mix of goal and assists, but his absolute influence at Bayern that impacts on their form and what they're actually capable of achieving. And that is a pretty good shout. I mean, Lewandowski obviously has had a good season, but he's not like the reason. Whereas Harry Kane in the Bundesliga so far this season has scored 2 hat-tricks. He's scored a brace. He scored 4 in one game in the Champions League. Okay, they won it 9-2. It doesn't matter too much. But he does still turn up in big moments and delivers, like a hat-trick against Stuttgart. Pretty impressive. But I'm not trying to knock you down here, because I probably have
I don't
Kane at
mind
7.
that, but like, I'm trying to find where the balance is, right?
Yeah.
In terms of form and star status, because there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Harry Kane is having a better season than Kylian Mbappe. There's absolutely no doubt that Lewandowski is having a better season than Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah.
Like, and Bukayo Saka has been out for the last couple of weeks. Now, what he did to start the season with the 6 games in a row where he's picked up an assist, all very impressive, but actually he's been injured for a little while. So it depends how far we're, pushing it, going back, pushing it forward. Yeah. I don't know that that's there yet. And also, these are kind of innate biases that live within it, right? Like, that, of course that matters. Of course that matters to all of this. I think I would still have Lewandowski. If you were to offer me Harry Kane or Robert Lewandowski to start up front for Fulham at the weekend, right now, for one game, I would pick Lewandowski. See,
I wouldn't. I would pick Kane. So I've got Kane at 7. You've got Kane at 8. And you've got Lewandowski at 7. I've got Lewandowski at 9. And then we've got variations of Messi in between there. So we're on similar lines here. Like, we're not miles apart.
Well, I think we're both showing quite a kind of youthful bias in some ways, right? That actually these feel, and I would include Kane in this, like the superstars of yesterday to a point now. And I think that we're pushing onwards to the superstars of right now.
We are.
And near future.
So at number 6, before we go to a break, that could change, because I would say here goes Yamal or Saka.
Yeah. And I think the answer right now is Bukayo Saka.
Okay.
And I love Bukayo Saka, fellow Ealing boy, one of my favourite footballers on the planet, one of the most joyful footballers on the planet. But I think what Lamine Yamal has done in recent months, I think the fact that he has fired Barcelona to the top of La Liga, the fact that he was a crucial element of Spain winning the Euros in the summer, gives him that edge right now in terms of what he's won recently, but also where he's at and the way that people are talking about him and looking at him. And whilst I adore Saka, I think right now that kind of right wing spot that everyone's getting very, very excited about, the right winger, and Saka's still very young, let's remember, but the right winger that everybody in world football is talking about right now is Lamine Yamal.
It's true. Look, let's be frank. They are both symbols of their clubs. Like, Saka, poster boy. Lamine Yamal, poster boy. That's totally fine.
Both academy products.
Both academy products.
Saka has a bigger body of work over the last few years, But actually, in terms of what that's amounted to, and look, you can discuss about competitiveness and all of those things, what that's amounted to on both the club and international stage, I think Yamal has already started to be like, and breaking every record, breaking the Messi records. Actually, this is a fun one. So earlier this week, Dean, Lamine Yamal turned the exact age that Lionel Messi made his Barcelona debut. Think about all the things that Lamine Yamal has done at this point already in terms of records broken. That is truly remarkable. And I think he has become a symbol of this new Spanish side and very much the symbol of the new Barcelona that looks so good this season. And I think for me, that probably pushes him above him. And look, maybe that is recency bias, fine. But for me, that's where I've got him. And I think we have to do these two together because I think whichever way we do it, they're going to end up a spot beside each other because they are two, as you say, academy graduates, symbols of their club, incredible talents, creative, masters already, even at really young ages. But I think Yamal is starting to take the star away and going and winning the Copa Trophy and all of those things kind of matter. And I think that's where he's at right now. So I'm going to say I'd put Yamal above Saka, but I'm sure lots of people disagree.
So in terms of stats, and we're looking at current form this season, Saka across the Premier League and the Champions League. Premier League 9 games, Champions League 2 games so far as we're recording this. He's got 4 goals and 7 assists across those games. Lamine Yamal, as we record this, 15 games across those 2 competitions, 6 goals, 8 assists. There's really not a lot between these 2 players.
No, there really isn't.
Here's where I would go. You've got an opportunity in the last few minutes. You've got the last few minutes of the game coming, right? You need someone to be decisive. You need someone to break through, produce a moment and be presented with a chance. Who do you want it to be, Lamine Yamal or Saka?
Well, I'd be quite happy with it being either.
I'd be happy with either, but if I had to pick one, I think it's Lamine Yamal.
Right now, just in terms of the spark he's got, I think so.
It's so tight. It's so tight. Arsenal fans hate us, but Saka is 6, and we can just jump the gun and say Lamine Yamal is going to be 5th.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. After the break, we're going to be doing 4-1. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Ranks FC, where we're finishing off the final part of this ranking. 4 players left in the tank. Mohamed Salah, Vinicius Jr., Kylian Mbappé, and Erling Haaland. Dean, where are you going at 4?
Oh, who's getting the crown? Who's getting the crown? Look, at 4, our friends at ChatGPT had Mo Salah. The reasons were consistently contributes goals and assists for Liverpool. Often steps up in critical moments to get points for Liverpool. Hardly misses games, consistently high performer, fan favourite, leading presence for the team. All very, very real points, right?
Yeah, 100%. But also I think his impact and influence in, basically taking North African football onto the map has been massive. And I think that for a wider audience, at the very least, that we've had some incredible teams out of North Africa recently, I think. But I think what Salah has done in terms of making that step to the Premier League and putting himself into that frame, the consistency levels are absolutely stunning. And the fact that he is already shifting himself up and up and up that top scorers ever Premier League history chart puts him in a very, very special bracket for me. And you could probably argue that we've just said we're doing superstars of yesteryear, superstars of right now. It doesn't feel massively like Salah has dropped off from where he was 2-3 years ago. And as you say, that consistency level means that I still put him in that bracket of one of the biggest names in world football. And to turn it up again this season with Arne Slot, what he produced at the weekend, the goal that sunk Brighton and sent Liverpool clear at the top of the Premier League. Just stunning again. And it's just such a regular thing that happens these days, that even when Mo Salah goes through dips, he just seems to rise again, every single time. And, we talked about Mo Salah's contract and whether Liverpool were going to let him go in the summer and whether they should, be dealing with a new contract. And every single time the answer just seems to be, Yeah, they should just do that, shouldn't they? They should do that. Every time it feels like he's about to fall off, drop off, move somewhere else, he just shows again and again and again why he's so highly valued.
Yeah, absolutely that. I mean, obviously, Salah posted that cryptic message after his goal against Brighton at the weekend saying, whatever happens, I will never forget what scoring at Anfield feels like. And it was a real emotional play for me on the heartstrings of Liverpool fans who were forced in that moment to read it and think about life without Salah. You're almost reminiscing about him leaving before he's gone.
Or he's gone, yeah.
And making you think, we can't lose this. But he's 32 years old. He just scored an absolute screamer to win us this game. And this is what he does. You look at his stats for this season, 15 games, 9 goals, 7 assists so far for Liverpool this season. In the Premier League, there's only 3 games that he hasn't scored in. The 3 games he hasn't scored in were Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. He has scored against Arsenal, against Chelsea, against Man United, the games that you really, really want and need him to score in, right? So Salah's still there. But when you watch Salah, yeah, he's a bit meh. Like a lot of the time you'll be watching him, you'll be like, is he even playing? So in terms of actual form, it does feel like he's fading. And you're putting him up here against Mbappé, Haaland and Vinny, who are far from fading. Like they are on the up. Whereas Salah is in that mix of players that we talked about earlier.
Mbappé might be fading.
He might be. And I think actually, I think that's the interesting thing is that for me, it's a toss-up between in positions
Salah
4 and
Mbappé.
3, it's Salah versus Mbappé, yeah. And actually, I think Salah could put forward a good case that right now he is in better form than Kylian Mbappé. How do we judge them then as superstar footballers in their teams, in terms of leadership, in terms of like how much they matter right now?
I'd have Salah above Mbappe. I'd have Mbappe at 4. And I appreciate that lots of this is, but I've come down to that kind of jersey sales bit before. And obviously Mbappe trumps that, and appreciate he's getting used to new surroundings. The balance doesn't feel right. But in terms of impact right now, I think the Mo Salah is having more of an impact than Kylian Mbappe. And again, if you offered me one of those 2 players to play for me at the weekend, I would pick Mo Salah. So I'm going to say Salah at 3.
Yeah, okay. Well, when you consider like their league and Champions League form up against each other, Salah's is better. Like Salah's is better. So far, he would have outscored him by 1, and he's got 5 more assists as we record this than Mbappe has put up so far this season. So you're right. Like Salah is just ahead of Mbappe. And I think when you consider all the other metrics with these two, like how would Mbappe compare? So I talked about all the ways you would consider. I mean, who would sell more shirts? Probably Mbappe, but probably minimal. But like I think basically with Mbappe, I think with Mbappe, the thing that probably gives him the edge, not just because we're comparing the teams of Real Madrid and Liverpool, but I think a fan of another team would be more likely to want an Mbappe shirt than a Salah shirt, if that makes sense, which in superstar icon status would put him a bit ahead of him. Fitness and consistency.
It's probably Salah.
It probably is. Also, I do think it goes against Mbappe, to be honest, what happened with France recently. Like, we're not really having that, are we? Like, I tried to stick up for him at the time, but the more I think about it, not really okay, was it? So,
no. I mean, I did make this point.
You did, absolutely did, yeah. Obviously, France will rely heavily on Mbappe in the future. Real Madrid aren't really relying on him. Liverpool are relying on Mo Salah. Salah's more of a superstar right now.
I think so. I think it's Mbappe at 4, Salah at 3.
Wow.
I think that's where I have him.
Honestly, I think this is the thing as well that measures up for Liverpool having a problem with this contract situation, is that they're expecting that they can live without Salah. And every time he does something like he did at the weekend, I think that's probably why he posted on Instagram saying that, is because he is still irreplaceable. And like, he should be replaceable because there are loads of good right wingers in world football. But they're not Mo Salah. They don't have that attachment to the fan base. Like, I'll be honest, Estupiñán didn't deal very well with Mo Salah in that moment. Like, his body language was off and he got done, because we know what Salah wants to do in that situation. He wants to cut inside and hit it. The fact he can still do it tells you everything. It's a bit of the Arjen Robins, isn't it? Like, you know what they're going to do, but you can't stop them from doing it. And that comes down to it. So here we go, mate. It's the big shootout between the big hitters. Vinicius Jr. versus Erling Haaland. I'll be honest. When I wrote it up, I had Haaland at 1, Vinny at 2.
Did you?
I did.
So I would probably have them the other way around. Now, I've been openly quite critical of what Real Madrid did with the Ballon d'Or. And I still don't think that was okay. I think that whilst they were well within their rights, I think that Vinicius Jr. could have won the Ballon d'Or. And again, the Ballon d'Or ranking the week before that we did, I had Vinicius Jr. top of it, but I said it was on a knife edge. And I think that sometimes when you get to these moments, you have to just be like, what's this going to look like? And actually what it looked like was really stroppy. But I have come to the conclusion that I don't think it was majorly pushed by Vinicius. I've come to the conclusion that he might have been a bit upset by not winning it, which is fair enough. He had a brilliant season and he was within, his rights and capabilities to think, oh, maybe I did do a little bit more than Rodri. But I also kind of get the feeling that this feels like Florentino Perez doing Florentino Perez things and deciding flat out, we're party line here, 3-line whip. We are not going. None of us are going and we're not going to do it. So I'm going to say that Vinicius remains top of this pile for me. I think that right now he is probably the biggest name in world football. He's definitely the name that most people are talking about. I think that what he's achieved in terms of consistency, what he's achieved in terms of the big stage, the big moment has been incredible. The one thing I would suggest has let him down is his form with Brazil. And that's fair enough. And you can look at the international stage and discuss that. But equally, until Erling Haaland's Norway, and I appreciate smaller nation don't qualify for as many things, and his record with Norway is excellent. But until they're there and having that conversation on the big stage, it's very difficult to be like, oh, we'll hold that against Vinicius, but Haaland isn't there, so we can't hold it against him. So in this shootout in particular between those two, I actually don't think that the international thing quite matters as much, weirdly, as I did when we were talking about Rodri with the Ballon d'Or. So in that regard, there's so little that lets Vinicius down in terms of what he has achieved, how he is looked at. And I think this summer, he was posed probably the biggest challenge that he was going to get, in that when Real Madrid signed Kylian Mbappé, they potentially signed a superstar name bigger than his. And when you look at the players that have still turned up this season for Real Madrid, I would have Vinicius above that. I think he has shrugged off that pressure. I think he has been one of the very few bright sparks. And I'll be honest, I don't think Real Madrid have been great, but he has been one of the bright sparks that has remained. He has still been the guy creating and doing bits, and the man they have looked to when it has mattered. And you look at that 5-2 against Dortmund and how that kind of panned out and what Vinicius put together. And I think that whilst Erling Haaland is absolutely brilliant, I do think there is something always about a player of Vinicius's kind of style that is going to make him more of a star. And that's where I'm at. And you know what's really funny? We spent ages being like, oh, is Haaland versus Mbappe going to be the new, Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi? And Vinicius just there like, yo, you missed me. You missed me. You forgot about me. And I quite like the fact that he has continued to put his hand up and be like, oh, don't forget about this guy, by the way. Don't forget about this guy. I think I'd have Vinicius top.
Okay, so obviously Vinicius scored a hat-trick against Borussia Dortmund in one of the most sensational games we've seen so far this season, like a huge turnaround, a massive moment that we thought was going to come just before he won the Ballon d'Or, but not to be. Away from that, he didn't score against Barcelona in the Clásico, so he didn't have a big influence on that. His stats across La Liga and the Champions League are 14 games, 8 goals, 6 assists. Erling Haaland has had 14 games across the Premier League and the Champions League. He's got 14 goals. So he's getting a goal a game. He's scored 2 hat-tricks, one against Ipswich, one against West Ham. He's had 2 big games, one against Arsenal, one against Chelsea, both in the Premier League. He scored in both of those matches.
Yeah.
He played against Inter Milan in the Champions League. That's the biggest game he's had so far. We're recording this before they play Sporting. He did not score against Inter Milan. He did score in the other two games against Bratislava and Prague. So obviously, like Haaland has this plan to score more goals than games he's played by the end of his career, and he's giving himself a good shot of doing that with 14 and 14. So in terms of output,
they're about the same, right?
They're about the same.
Contributions in 14 games.
Exactly. So in kind of contributions, you would say 14 and 14 for both. And I think the hat-trick against Dortmund compared to hat-tricks against Ipswich and West Ham, the Dortmund one's better and probably more important. So it's difficult.
In the context of that game as well, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is, as I say, one of the more iconic games of this season. When it comes to fitness and consistency, how do we feel about Vinny?
Pretty similar to the way that Haaland is, I think,
Haaland is impressing me right now because I'm convinced he's injured. Like, I watched the game at the weekend and Haaland looked injured from about the 5th to 10th minute. They have to play him every single minute at the moment, Man City, because they have no alternative. And so I don't think that's necessarily helping him, but he has not missed a minute of Premier League football so far this season, Haaland, and I don't think that that's ideal. I don't think that would have been the case. But for Vinny, they do have somebody that could be playing instead of him. They could be putting Mbappé out there and being like, okay, Vinny, sit this one out, mate. And they're not. Yeah. So you've got a guy there that, I'm arguing against myself here, should really probably have won the Ballon d'Or, has recently scored a hat-trick in one of the more iconic games of the season, is always there. And here's one. I didn't agree with this on ChatGPT, actually. This is the one thing that I thought I didn't 100% feel with. In terms of influence on team results, they said he's often a game winner for Man City, especially in the big games. And
I think the thing is that Haaland scores so many goals that you kind of get to that point where you're like, well, of course he scored. Yeah. So I imagine there are loads of big games that Haaland's goal, the recognition that he gets there probably is a little bit below where it should be.
Yeah.
Like, because he scores so frequently, like it kind of changes it. And I think that comes from like a lack of assists. And I'm not really using that as a criticism, but like when you score 14, like we're saying, 14 goal contributions, right? So those are all goals for Haaland. So you're like, well, he scored loads of goals. So you kind of forget which ones happen. And I think that with Vinicius, he often puts up the assist numbers in different games. The big games he often scores. And that actually probably works in his favour in that regard. But I don't think it's necessarily a massive stretch to say that Haaland scores in big games.
Yeah.
You just said Arsenal and Chelsea, right?
Yeah. Also, though, like a couple of weeks ago, I think I would have had Haaland. I'm starting to change my mind here a little bit because obviously in recent weeks, Haaland hasn't been golden Haaland. And I don't think that's partly because of the team, but in the Premier League, last 5 games, Haaland's got 1 goal. It was against Southampton. It was the only goal against Southampton, but equally, he could have probably had 4 or 5 in that game. So I'm going to flip it. I think you're right. Vinny at 1, Haaland at 2 is probably the right way around.
Okay, all right. Well, there we have it. A full ranking. I enjoyed that a lot. Trying to do that live was really hard. Like,
it was, but I thought it went okay.
Live. You can rank like 3 things, like 3 players about things. When you're doing 10, I'm still sitting there going, well, if we're dropping Mbappe below Salah, should we have dropped him below Lamine Yamal? Should we have dropped him below Saka?
Yeah.
Because of where he is. And then it becomes harder to kind of actually judge them. So trying to put them into categories makes it easier to actually, judge those 2 players against each other. But then I'm like, the category's right. So who knows? I think maybe people will agree, maybe they'll disagree. Look, that's what we'll come to.
We've agreed on a top 6. We've got Vinicius Jr. at 1. We've got Haaland at 2, Salah at 3, Mbappe at 4, Lamine Yamal at 5, Saka at 6. And it was only beyond that point when we started to disagree. I had Kane 7, Messi 8, Lewandowski 9, Ronaldo 10. You had Lewandowski 7, Kane 8, Messi 9, Ronaldo at 10.
Really?
It's a good ranking. Just don't let Ronaldo hear about it.
No. You won't like that one at all. Look, send us yours in on social media. You can tweet us. You can drop them in our Instagram DMs.
I'll come over to Patreon and chat about it. Yeah.
100%. Or come over to the Patreon where we have these kind of discussions live.
I'm going to actually open a thing on Patreon after this episode goes out to just get people's thoughts on it. I'm going to open up a comments thread to just get people to give us their thoughts on it because I think it'll be good.
Yeah, there's one for the debate. And look, at some level, it's incredibly subjective. So that's all we've come to. But let us know your thoughts. Please don't shout at us. I hate being shouted at. But I'm sure that there'll be plenty of disagreement across the board. And on that note, I think we're probably going to call this a day. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you very much to Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. Thank you so much for listening as ever. Doogie and Sam will be back with the truth on Friday. We'll have a Champions League takeaway tomorrow night before that as well. So make sure you're tuned in for that. Loads on the feed this week for you to get stuck into. And of course, more as ever over on the Patreon. Link is in the description if you fancy coming and joining us over there. For now, thanks for listening and we'll see you very shortly, Rank Squad. Take it easy. Peace.
Final seconds of the game. A chance to score and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system, or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.